Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Chit Chat. I am your host, Guy Magno, and it is my joy to serve as the host of this podcast. Thank you for continuing to listen. As this community has grown, it has been so fun to hear from you about your thoughts on the podcast and just that there are so many people that are finding some kind of value in hearing the story of our community. I'm thankful that I get to be a part of that. And today is no different and really kind of special. Danielle Dinger was our guest on the podcast today, and we had a really unique conversation, unlike any of the podcast guests that we've had on. You'll hear her story here in a bit, but Danielle, in the last handful of years, was diagnosed with Parkinson's, young onset Parkinson's, and we talked about that and her as she's approaching mortality in a different kind of way. There's a sweetness and an honesty, and we talked about that. And this podcast it's about St. Cloud. It's about the stories of our people, and Danielle's story is just that. And so I was so thankful for her willingness to come on and talk about that. She's also a potter, so like I wanted to have her on to talk about pottery, and we did talk a little bit about that, but. Really, we talked about Parkinson's and how to approach hard news in your life. So you can enjoy that conversation now. Danielle, welcome to the podcast. It is a treat to be with you. Thanks for coming and joining.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Danielle, I've known you for a number of years now. I think primarily your husband, Dom, Pastor Dom, I've known for a while, and I think got to know you a little bit through Pastor Dom and also through all of your lovely pottery. But, just running in some of like this similar kind of maker and creative spaces over the years in St. Cloud. It's sweet that it's been fun to know you and to just be creative in a town that you're being creative in. And so I'm just really excited and thankful for you being on today.
Mm-hmm.
So, I asked when I ran into Dom at some point in the last maybe handful of weeks. I said, "Oh, it'd be so fun. Do you think Danielle would come on the podcast? It'd be so fun to talk to her about pottery and making and creative and all that stuff." And he said, "You for sure should have Danielle on, but I think that you should talk to her about Parkinson's." And so that's what I hope that we get to do today. And I'm really thankful that you're willing to hop on. Just for our listeners, I've never had a conversation in this kind of manner like this before. And the goal of our podcast is that we want to tell the stories of what's happening in St. Cloud because that's what St. Cloud is. And I don't even think I've actually said this on the podcast before. In the first handful of episodes of the podcast, I kept asking people, "What's your favorite thing about St. Cloud?" Because in my mind, I had said this is a podcast about St. Cloud. I forced us to have all these same conversations about what do you like about St. Cloud? And that's boring. It's boring to be a part of. I think it was boring to listen to, it'd be my guess. But then what I realized, if this is a podcast about St. Cloud, it's just a podcast about its people. Mm-hmm. And our people look completely different, and they are walking through drastically different kinds of things, and the things that they care about and focus on are also different. And that's what's fun and interesting because we're a unique body of people here in St. Cloud. And so a podcast about St. Cloud is actually just a podcast about its people. And so the fact that you're willing to jump on and tell us a little bit about your journey that you've been on is really sweet, and I appreciate it very much.
For sure.
So maybe just introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us who you are. How long have you been in St. Cloud? And then maybe tell us how you ended up finding out about your Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm. So we moved to St. Cloud 20 years ago. We were involved in a church in St. Paul, and it was called a Calvary Chapel. And there's lots of Calvary Chapels across the country, but not a lot in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And so
California based, right?
Yes.
Initially, yeah.
Yep. And so we felt led to start some Bible studies. Mm-hmm. And so we did that all around Minnesota, and we started coming out to St. Cloud. And the more we came out here, we just both separately, on our own, really felt like the Lord was telling us that we were going to plant a church here. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of came to each other and shared that. I think St. Cloud is the place where we're gonna move and make our home and start a church. And so that was in 2004, so 20 years ago. And
when was the actual, did you guys have a celebration, a 20-year celebration or thing? When was the day?
Well, actually, it was just a couple days ago. It was we didn't really have a party, but we should get around to that.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 years in St. Cloud.
Incredible. Incredible. I'm gonna have to reach out to Dom. That's 20 years is incredible.
Yeah. So Dom started Bible study, and that led into building the church. I mean, we always wanted God to build the church, and not by might, not by power, but by His Holy Spirit. We wanted the church to be built, and so it was like a real steady faithfulness that we just kind of kept plowing, and over time, like, the church has grown. We changed the name in 2020 to Refuge, and just felt like that fit us a little bit better, and also was a little less confusing since there's Calvary Community in St. Cloud as well. So that differentiated us a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then we had kids. We have 4 kids, and I stayed home with them when they were little, and I was always an artist, but I got into ceramics about 10 years ago, and found that was just like my thing. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was dreaming about it. I was like waking up in the night thinking about it, and I just couldn't get enough. So I was going down to the Paramount Visual Arts Center in their studios, and just practicing and asking questions and watching videos, and then I was accumulating a lot of pots at that point, and so I thought, well, I wonder if I could sell some of these, and so I started selling some of my work, and then I thought, what would be even cooler than me, like, opening up my studio is inviting some other artists and just like collaborating, and so I did that about 7 years ago. Opened up my living room and invited some local artists, all from St. Cloud. And then did it again the next year. And then the next year it grew so big that we moved downtown. And that's the Makers Market, St. Cloud. So that was born, 7 years ago.
Wow.
And so...
And how many people, like
so
last
now,
year, how many people do you think came?
Well, we have about 2,000 shoppers that come.
It's incredible.
It is.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And this year we have 46 artists. We have I call them artists, makers, bakers, authors. So, but they're almost everyone is from St. Cloud or the surrounding area, and just really like showcases the talent that we have in St. Cloud.
Yeah.
And my heart is that it just brings awareness to like the beauty of making and creating, and when you buy like Christmas gifts, like, just think, instead of buying it from the big box stores, like, what if you gave a gift that had a story attached to it? Like, you gave a gift where you knew the person that made it, and then when you gave that gift, you can tell that story. And I just think it brings us closer to our belongings.
And just like from a small business perspective, it's incredible that those dollars and resources also stay in our community too.
I love that.
It's so good. When you started the Makers Market, did you have any sense that it could be something that grew to this size and this scale?
No, for sure. I thought it would just be like something kind of cute in my living room. But I just loved it so much, and I felt like the people that were coming really resonated with that idea, and it felt like it was really needed in the area to just kind of shed light on the artists that we have in the community.
Yeah.
So, I didn't expect it to grow that much, but I'm good with the size it is, and not really expanding any more than it is right now.
It's great. And what's the date of it?
This date is this year's December 14th.
Okay.
Saturday.
So December 14th. Make sure that you get, it's a Saturday, right?
It's a Saturday.
Saturday, December 14th.
At the Regency, 9 to 2.
Okay. Make sure you go and get some good locally created gifts. Speaking of like makers things and art shows, have you noticed, like, do you like to go to others?
Yeah.
So much of it is just drop ship stuff. I was at, we were in Arkansas recently, and we went to a big, huge, really, it sounded like it was going to be incredible. Tens of thousands of people, I think, hundreds of exhibitors. And I bet you I can count on just a couple of hands the number of things where, like, I was sure that was a handmade thing. It's like, that's drop shipped. That was ordered. That was ordered online. I was like, this is not the like art show that I remember as a kid.
Yeah.
It feels like so much of it is
I know.
gone
And
the way of
so,
drop shipping.
so that was like my original vision of it, was that it was like art that was created by the person selling it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a craft kit that you buy, and it wasn't something you buy at Michael's and, put some paint on it, but it was like makers, like
Yeah.
people that have been honing their craft for years.
Yeah.
And so that was like a little tricky, navigating how do I like let people in or not, and what if it's my friend, and like I have this connection, and how do I say like your art's not good? Like I'm like, what do I do?
But you've navigated it.
But yeah, so we have like a jury now, like a blind jury, so people actually have to apply
Wow.
and send photos, and so that's kind of one of
What a
our
great way
rules
to go about it.
is that like you have to have made your thing
Yeah.
from scratch.
Oh, I love that. Well, the maker's market feels so different. It feels really great. Seriously, everybody should go check it out.
Thank you.
Okay, so Danielle, you have been on a journey with Parkinson's for how many years now?
So I was diagnosed in 2020,
Okay.
that terrible year.
Yeah.
And so I think it just started with a tremor in my hand. And I had that for, I don't know, maybe a year, kind of on and off. And it was kind of subtle. It was subtle enough that I would just hide it or ignore it. And I thought, man, I'm getting really anxious. Like coffee is really affecting me. And I love coffee so much, like with all my heart. But I had to stop drinking the caffeine. And so I went to half calf. Even that was too much. And I couldn't like figure out what was going on. And there was one day that my mom stopped over, and she hadn't seen me in a while. And the minute she walked in the house, she looked at me and she said, "What is going on with your hand?" And so that kind of stopped me in my tracks. Like maybe I need to get this checked. Like I need to stop calling it something else or ignoring it. And so, and I don't really go to the doctor ever, but I made an appointment, and she was just a traditional MD, and she just looked at me and she said, "Well, it's probably stress, but I think maybe you should see a neurologist just in case." And so I saw a neurologist, and that appointment took about 5 minutes. And she looked at me, like told me to pat my lap. There was kind of these diagnostic tests that they do, but pretty simple, like pat my lap, like hold my hands, flip my hands over, tap my fingers to my thumbs, walk down the hall. And this whole time, like I drove myself there because I totally thought it was nothing, that she was just going to tell me like, you're stressed out because it's 2020, like everybody's stressed out. Yeah. And then I came back to the room and she said, "Well, I think you might have Parkinson's disease, so I'm going to order you a DAT scan," which was it's a brain scan. And I just felt like the floor like fell out from beneath me, because I had been Googling tremors like every single night. There's essential tremors and there's Parkinson's tremors. And even though my tremor fit all of the qualifications of a Parkinson's tremor, I just completely believed that it was an essential tremor, which is like not really a big deal.
Yeah.
And so when she said that, I just kind of lost it, and I was there alone, and so I scheduled my DAT scan, and of course she didn't have any bedside manner, so that didn't help either.
Yeah.
I guess she just, people get used to their jobs and forget that it's a human.
A human being.
And so the next step was to get a scan of my brain. And what that does is like they give you this radioactive material that goes to your brain, and it finds like the dopaminergic cells in your brain, and it lights up. And so if you have one side lit up and the other not lit up, that would be considered abnormal. And so that's what appeared. So that was kind of like my proof that I did indeed have Parkinson's. And so there was probably 4 or 5 months there where I was terrified to even tell anybody. I didn't want the attention. I didn't want this feeling of like letting people down. Like I'm a coach, and I thought like my kids, like, I don't know, they'll look at me differently, and like maybe they'll lose hope in God. Like, why did this terrible thing happen to her? I was afraid, as just being sort of in the spotlight as a pastor's wife too. I'm always in the front row, and I thought people are going to be watching for my tremor. They're going to be watching if I'm going to trip, or like people are just going to feel bad for me. And I didn't like that feeling of attention or feeling of pity or whatever. So it was just a very lonely time. I felt like I needed to kind of hibernate. I was really afraid of what people would say, and I just had all these like things that I thought they would say to me in my head, and I was terrified of them asking me or saying those things because I couldn't handle it myself. And so I did just kind of hibernate for a while and just like sat with the Lord and until I got used to it. And I knew that I'd find hope at some point. I just didn't know how I'd get there. So I didn't like lose my faith in God at all. Like I knew he was right there with me. And I've never been a person that's asked why, because I don't need to know why. God just saying like, I am who I am is enough to answer any of those questions. But I was okay, like in that period of like grief, I was okay not being okay. I mean, I know that's kind of like a cliche thing we say all the time, but I felt like I couldn't rush that process of like getting to the okay period. I needed to really like soak in that grief and just allow myself that time to grieve and be okay with the unknown.
Yeah. On that first day, so you're sitting there in the doctor, and without a lot of tact, she tells you that you have Parkinson's. You're sitting there by yourself. The floor falls out. What did you do next? I mean, how did you tell your family? How did you tell Dom? How do you tell the kids? Like, what is the process like of finding out a really hard diagnosis by yourself alone? And then how do you figure out when to fold the people that you love the most into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, Dom was right. He wasn't there at that appointment, but, like when I got home and then when we got the kind of final diagnosis it was through Zoom at home after the DAT scan. And, we were together crying on each other's shoulders. And so we were in that right together. And he's just been the biggest rock for me through this. Telling the kids was definitely the hardest part. It was 4 years ago, so they were younger. My oldest was only 15 at the time. And so he took it the hardest because he had probably the most understanding of kind of how devastating the disease is. And the younger two didn't know what that meant. And so I didn't even really use those terms with them. They were always praying for mom's shaky hand. And that's just kind of how they termed it. And I just was like, it's probably going to keep shaking, and so that was okay. Now I think they'll just kind of remember their childhood as probably mom's always had Parkinson's disease. Silas and Josie, our older two, they'll remember that point where it like shifted.
A before and after.
Yeah. And then I think telling the church was like that was like the next biggest thing.
Right.
And so we actually went away for a weekend and had the elders of the church like share that news, just so I wouldn't feel like there was like this beam of spotlight on me and how is she going to react. So at that point, it had been some time for me to kind of process. And so I had already imagined all the things people would say, like the whole, well, God's still on the throne, kind of those like things that we Christians, where we think we have to always like button up every sad thing with like a God, a God thing where it makes it all okay. Yeah. And I was like, it's going to be okay when people say those things now, because like I already have my peace. And, the vast majority of responses was just immense support and sorrow and kind of like crying along with me.
Yeah.
And certainly I got, some of the ones that I kind of expected. But at that point, like God had given me enough like grace to just handle those and kind of nod and
Yeah, it's a unique thing in that granted it's different, but people, grief is hard, like knowing how to grieve yourself, is not always easy. And then how do you grieve for other people in a way that's honoring of them? And, like when you find out something, sometimes it's hard to know exactly how do I join you, and how much is too much? Like how should I always ask you about it? Should I never ask you about it? And so I'm sure, just with telling as many people as you've had to tell, just the wide variety of grief responses that you probably have had to kind of navigate.
Yeah.
When you came to church that first Sunday, the first Sunday after being back, what was it like to walk in?
I was terrified.
Yeah.
And it was just still so raw. So I just was worried what people would think or how much people would be watching me. But, over time, it's like I look pretty normal for the most part. Like, we say that people with Parkinson's say that we have on and off times. And because I'll explain just a little bit what Parkinson's is a lack of dopamine. So like most people, by the time they're diagnosed with Parkinson's, have about only 25% of the dopamine that a healthy brain has. And so we supplement that. Most people supplement that with dopamine pills.
Sure.
And so those only last a few hours, and then, it wears off, and so the symptoms come back, and that would be an off period. So when I'm on, most of my symptoms are pretty hidden, but it, sooner or later, I'll start shaking again. And
Sure.
I guess worried about if I was on an off period or on period. But now at this point, I'm less self-conscious about it. I do keep my hands in my pockets a lot because my hands shake a lot, but I'm not terrified anymore of what people will think. Now it's this is part of me. So take it or leave it, like it or not.
Are there different kinds of Parkinson's?
Well, so what I have is young onset Parkinson's, which is if you're diagnosed age 60 or under.
Okay.
There's only 4% of people with Parkinson's that are diagnosed that young. So, yay. I'm quite in the rare percentage. But so young onset, the good news is that it progresses slower for the most part. And there's even a neurologist at the Mayo that would like to see it classified as an entirely different disease because it is so different, and it does progress so differently. But, sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, just I think that was kind of the question. Are there different kinds of Parkinson's? And I guess could you help me understand a little bit more, even just what does the dopamine, help me understand, I'm not super smart, but a little bit more of the science around it. What does the dopamine do? How does the dopamine prevent your hand from shaking?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I have the right answers.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has the right answers. They're not even sure where the issue is. It's quite deep in the brain. It's the basal ganglia, which is kind of if you were to go straight back from my nose and way down deep, is that it's really hard to get to. And it's an area that controls movement, joy, motivation, and movement, I said. So they're not sure if it's in the sending of dopamine cells or the receiving, what the issue is, but there's death of the dopaminergic cells, and they don't know what's causing it. Only 20% of the cases are genetic. The other 80% are environmental, and we don't know. We do know some pesticides they think cause Parkinson's, but it's the fastest growing neurological disease out there. Wow. And so we have to go, what the heck is going on? Yeah.
Because if it was purely hereditary, then there wouldn't be, it wouldn't grow, right? It would grow at the same, it would grow at the same pace that the population grows. But if it's spiking in some capacity, there's some sort of environmental cause.
There is, yeah. And we don't know what it is.
Interesting. And as you have navigated a serious diagnosis, you've probably had to navigate the idea and the concept of death and mortality in a different kind of way. I mean, everybody should, right? We will all leave Earth someday, and so we all should engage with that idea. But what has that process been like for you? Just at however old you are,
Yeah.
just navigating that maybe before other people do.
Sure. So I was diagnosed at age 44, and immediately I just went to the worst case scenario. Like if you just Googled Parkinson's disease, I mean, it's terrible. The list of things that's going to happen to you. And I ordered books on Parkinson's, and I was reading it like a textbook. Oh, so you tremor on one side of your body, pretty soon your left side will tremor too. And I was just reading this wow.
Like it's a recipe or
Yeah,
something.
like all of these things are going to start happening to me, and in less than 10 years, I'm going to be in a wheelchair and no control over my body. I won't be able to speak or swallow. It was just horrible. Everything was just going to break down quickly, and all the dreams that I had for my future, just even walking hand in hand with my husband, I'm that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. My kids are going to be feeding me with a spoon, and just, it was horrible. But I have found, I've just found hope. I've found so much hope, and just letting go of fear of the future, plus learning a lot that's not what typically happens with young onset Parkinson's, and that we do have some control over it with exercise, because exercise is proven to slow down the progression of Parkinson's. And thankfully, I've always been very active, and I love to exercise, and so I've ramped that up even more, and I do feel like that's been effective in slowing my progression down. But yeah, I'm faced every day with mortality and just kind of the breakdown of the human body, that we're not here forever, and this isn't our home, and my body I'm not going to have forever, no matter how healthy I eat or how much I exercise. It is going to break down. Yeah. And I mean, the moment I wake up, the moment I open my eyes, even in the middle of the night, my tremor starts. And so it's this.
And so you don't shake while you sleep?
I don't shake when I sleep. Yes, that is
interesting.
Thank you. But it's this. It's a gift of this complete dependence on God, that I need Him. I mean, every moment that I'm awake, I'm reminded that that I'm imperfect, and that this isn't going to last. And that's okay.
I don't know why. Ever since I was little, I have loved cemeteries. There's something about walking through a cemetery that I think has always kind of felt important, and I enjoy. I mean, as much as you can, the thinking about mortality. I think it's important. Churches used to the cemeteries were in. All of the cemeteries were at church, and so on Sunday when you went to church, you walked through a cemetery, and you had this this reminder of mortality. This shell that we have is not going to last. It will break down, and someday I'll be gone. There was this kind of constant reminder, and it feels like we keep as a society and a people, we keep separating. We keep we separate the distance between the living and the idea, even the idea of mortality, in a kind of way that I don't know is healthy. And I've never said this here before. Every year, we've done one, our first annual, me and one of my best friends, a mortality day, and we toured a bunch of cemeteries. This is going to sound so strange. It sounds so strange. We read a book about death and about kind of, as a Christian, the Christian approach to death, and how should we approach that. And I have this working theory that if I keep mortality to a certain extent in front of me as a reminder, I hope that however many days I have left, right? I mean, today, this one could be the last one, right? And I could have 50 more ahead of me, 50 more years, I don't know. But if I keep mortality in front of me, I hope that every day that I have, I can live it in a kind of way that is better and right and more honoring to the Lord. And so I think just in general, I'm curious with how people, approach mortality, and I'm thankful for your willingness to talk about it and to approach it. What is something that what's something that you have learned about yourself or about people around you as you have engaged with the idea of death and mortality in a unique kind of way? What have you learned about yourself?
I think I've gained a really beautiful empathy for others that are grieving. Just kind of going through grief and seeing what has ministered to me has given me such a depth of insight in how to minister to somebody else that's grieving, and not to like feel like we have to jump to that happy conclusion, and like let's end this on a happy note. Like it's okay to just be like, that sucks. Like that was the best thing, that when someone just said, that sucks. Like, yep. Thanks. That it's kind of validating, and I don't need it like tied up all happy.
Packaged.
Yeah. So I'm thankful for that I can like commiserate. I can cry with someone who's crying. Like I don't have to have an answer. Just like having that like, I don't know, taken off the plate. Like you don't have to be a counselor to help somebody grieving. Like all you have to do is listen and just understand what they're going through. And if you that's why Jesus said, just weep through with those who weep. Like that's ministers so much. So I think, that empathy was a really great gift, and just finding hope, I think, in something that seems very hopeless. Like given the diagnosis of a progressive disease, like progressive means like it's going to get worse. I always think of that word progress as like something good, like let's make progress, but progressive disease is like
just going to move forward.
Yeah, it's not good. So you're faced with something that's like, you're gonna get worse, is like always there. So how do you find hope in something that seems hopeless? Like, but you can, because it's that whole thing of like, this world is not my home. Like if I thought this world was my home and like this is all we got, that would be hopeless for sure. Because if things are only going to get worse here and that's the end, like that is hopeless. But it's not the end. And God promises me a new body and an eternity with him in heaven. And so that's for sure hopeful. But even just, I don't have to be hopeful in like feeling great or having everything working out right in my body or whatever. Like I'm hopeful that God is good and that life is a gift and the people around me are a gift and everything is a gift. So I'm just so thankful, like so grateful, and it keeps me happy.
Yeah. Sweet. I've heard you touched it here for a second, talking about exercise, but you and I have had some other conversations in the past about just like how important, exercise should be important to everybody, but just some of the things. Will you just tell us a little bit more about, are you still boxing? Are you?
Yeah. I do have a home boxing program that's pretty sweet. And it's kind of like interactive. So I've got these little trackers that I can put in my gloves and then watch the workout on TV, and it changes all the time. And it's a lot of like, kind of like choreography where you learn the punches and you learn like the set and then you repeat it. And so it's brain work, and then it's like using both sides of your body. So that's why there's a whole program called Rock Steady Boxing that's specifically for Parkinson's patients. Yeah, because it's just so good for Parkinson's and for people that are challenged in that way.
So it has the physical thing, but there's the mental connection piece of that too.
Yeah, it's kind of like dancing where, and I don't like consider myself somebody that's very coordinated, but being challenged with like learning and memorizing, the punches and I feel like it gives me both a mental and physical workout.
Wow. And ideally, how many times a week would you do something like that?
Well, so in the winter I do it more. Otherwise I'm running pretty much the rest of the year. Yeah. So I might do it like 3 times a week in the winter.
Yeah. Great. And were you a runner before Parkinson's, or was running something that you picked up?
Yeah, I've always been a runner. I just love it. I love running with others. I love teaching people to run. I love trail running. I've run marathons and ultra marathons, and
Wow.
ran the Grand Canyon this last year. So yeah, I kind of set these big giant goals so that it keeps me like working out, and I
Yeah.
just always have something that I'm training for.
When you say you ran the Grand Canyon,
Okay, yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah, I should put like quotes around ran because I didn't like run the whole thing, but we ran like, well, okay, hiked, I should say.
Sure.
Ran slash hiked. But so like there's North Rim and South Rim, and so we went down like one side, got to the bottom of the canyon. That's the part that we ran almost all of that, and then found the waterfall, which is spectacular. Did you know there's a waterfall?
No.
Yeah, and then ran back the other side.
Wow. How long does it take?
It took us 14 hours.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
35 miles.
And when you say we, who did you go and do that with?
So there were 4 ladies.
Okay.
Yep,
Wow. That's awesome.
it was awesome.
Do you have like now, so Grand Canyon check. Is there another big one that you've set as a goal?
I will soon. I've done a bunch of 50Ks, and I'd like to do one in Zion. I don't have another one lined up, but I will for sure.
Cool. You said that you like to teach people to run. Like what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people think like I can't run. Like I hear a lot of people say I can't run. I can't even run a block. I could never even run a mile. And I think I could teach you, because if you just get past this certain point, like this certain threshold, like that's where the fun part happens. And a lot of people just get to the point where it hurts, and then they stop. And then they go their whole life thinking like I can't run. And so if you just like work through that point and then you get to the good part, then you realize that like running actually can be fun.
Is dopamine the chemical that's released when you work out?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, is that a piece of it too? Does as you're working out, does that obviously, like, if dopamine is released, but does the release of the dopamine while you're working out, does that help maintain things and preserve things in this dopamine response that you're
In the
navigating?
long run, yes. I mean, it can be a little disheartening because anything like anything that kind of excites me or like makes me anxious or anything like that, emotional, like will trigger more tremors. So sometimes if I work out really hard, like my tremors are worse. But in the long run, like what it's doing for my brain and for my body is like overall so good and helps with like motivation to like keep going.
If you were going to talk to someone that found out today, like you did when the floor dropped out with that doctor, what would you tell them? How would you encourage them?
Well, I would probably say to them what somebody wrote, I think, on one of the forums, when I was desperate and searching for, like, how do I find another young person with Parkinson's? Because I was finding a lot of elderly people with Parkinson's, but I'm, like, completely not in the same stage of life and didn't think that was really going to be helpful. So I really was desperate to find another young onset Parkinson's patient. And so it was just like an online forum where I was kind of put out there, like, help. I was just diagnosed and, got a number of responses. And one of them was, it's not the worst thing in the world. And that just really stuck with me. It was like, it's not. Like, I'm still here. Like, I didn't die in a car crash last week, and I don't have stage 4 cancer, or, like, it's not the worst thing in the world. And thank God there is some control that I have with exercise, and I can still, like, manage this thing with medication. And so that would be the first thing, is it's not the worst thing in the world. And then the second would just be there's hope, because there's always, always, always hope.
As you're thinking about management, I'm sure if you think about and you care about fitness in the way that you do, I'm sure you care about food and diet. Are there foods or that you can feel have positive effects on you? And are there foods that trigger Parkinson's or reaction more than others?
Well, protein definitely limits the efficacy of the medication. So you have to kind of time it right. And that can get pretty tricky for people because you have to take it so many times during the day. And then if you're trying to like manage that around mealtime, that's often how people get like their off times is just it's just hard to time it right. But otherwise, I mean, whole foods is like, of course, that's going to be better. Like, am I really disciplined with food? No. Like, do I love cookies and chocolate? Yeah.
So you're human. Okay,
I'm
good.
human and I like sugar and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's something I could work on.
So in general, are you trying to eat a lower protein diet, or is it really just a timing thing? Like I know I need to get my protein in. I just need to time it.
I know protein's important, so there's no way I'm going to cut that out.
Yeah. Especially if you like fitness in the way that you do. Yeah.
Sometimes I just suffer through it if I miss the window, and otherwise I just try to time it right.
Yeah. And how long is a normal window?
For me, it's about 3.5 hours.
Okay. So from when you take your medication to when any tremors start, or for when it's like kind of
bad.
Yeah.
Because even though, I took medication an hour and a half ago, like if I'll still start tremoring if I get really nervous or if I had a cup of coffee or something, even though I'm medicated right now. But yeah, they'll start like almost clockwork about 3.5 hours after my last dose.
Does the window get shorter?
Yes.
And at what kind of rate does it get shorter? And does that help you plan or prepare for what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, I do try not to think about it too much, but some people say like they hold off on even starting the medication because they say, well, after a while it stops working. But what happens is, no, your disease has progressed and you need more medication. So, I mean, it's going to happen. Like, as much as I don't like to talk about, what could happen or talk negatively, I mean, eventually, yes, I will need more. But I try to take as little as possible.
Well, Danielle, as you're thinking about this, and as you're maybe navigating life with Parkinson's, and is there anything else that you would want people to know about you, Danielle, as a person, or about Parkinson's and young onset? Is that what you said? Anything else that you would want people to know about you or about young onset Parkinson's?
I am excited to share the hope that I've found with other people. I started writing a book, and so I'm almost done with it. I just cannot figure out the publishing part of it. So that's something for the future that I hope, however it comes out, that it is helpful to people, whether they have Parkinson's disease or they have any kind of chronic disease, or they have bad news, or they feel like they don't have hope. Like, I feel like I got this thing that I got to share, and if this disease was given to me through the filter of God's fingertips, like He's allowed it in my life. And so certainly it's for a reason. And if I can use what I've learned to help other people, I really want to do that. So hopefully soon in the future, that will be something available to people.
Well, when it's published, I can't wait. I look forward to reading it and learning more about you and about your story, and having my life continue to be blessed by you and the example that you have set. Danielle, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for your willingness to come on and have a different kind of conversation than I've ever had on the podcast before. So I appreciate it so much. I'm really thankful for you.
Thank you so much.
We close all of our podcasts with an unpaid ad. Is there someone or something or some idea that you think deserves a little plug today?
Okay, I love shoes. I do. I
Tell
love
me more.
shoes. I love boots. And when I found Blundstones, I was like, I'm home. Like
Blend stone.
No, Blundstones.
Blund. Spell that.
Blundstonnes.
All right.
Yeah, I'm wearing Doc Martens today, but the Blundstones are like my home.
Okay.
They're just like the coolest boots, and they're super comfortable, and I feel like I can do anything in those. I wear them in my art studio all the time, and that's my plug, Blundstones.
Blundstones.
They're not cheap, but like you only need one pair.
Yeah. I mean, a good pair of shoes is
Yeah.
never cheap. Do they make men's shoes?
Yes.
Okay. Does Dom have a pair of Blundstones?
He's not as much into shoes as I am,
Okay.
so no.
All right. I think my plug then is I am interested in a pair of black clogs. They're called Tokios, Tokio, by Birkenstock. It's basically their clog with the strap on the back. And
Yeah, I've seen those.
yeah, I'm in a little fight right now with Taylor, one of my business partners, because when one of us does something, the other one kind of does it too. And so he feels like if I buy this pair of clogs, he's going to need to buy that pair
Yeah,
of clogs
that's
too.
okay. You can do that.
I think so too. I think I for years I wore Birkenstocks and I haven't had a pair in a long time. And I think I'd really like a pair. So I think they look cool. Maybe you can let me know if you think they do or not. But
They do look cool.
all right. You heard it here, world. Danielle thinks that the Tokyo Birkenstock is a good looking shoe. And I'm going to go check out Blundstones.
Okay.
Danielle, God bless you. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. I appreciate it more than
Thanks,
you know.
Guy.